Hello, this is John Krasinski, Pittsburgh Soccer Now. Welcome to a new episode of the Kids on the Pitch podcast. We are coming right down to the wire. We're down to the last week of the high school soccer season. Kids on the Pitch podcast here. We like to really ramp things up as we get to the playoffs, as far as the WPIL playoffs, which will kick off on Wednesday, or actually we'll get the playoff brackets on Wednesday, October 15th. So with that in mind, just stay tuned with Pittsburgh Soccer Now's coverage. We anticipate getting out some playoff projections, most likely like next Monday or Tuesday, the 13th or 14th. We'll finally put together our final playoff projections. So stay tuned for all of that on Pittsburgh Soccer Now. Both the boys and girls side, it's been a very interesting year so far. I think we've seen some teams we've expected to be at the top of the standings, but there's been some surprises and there's been some really good competition. And now it's coming down to the wire. I think there's a few teams jockeying for position in terms of the playoff seedings, but I think for the most part, we know where everyone's going to land, or at least close to that. But yeah, looking forward to how the competition shakes out. It's been a pretty good season. Also want to thank all the coaches that have participated in our Coaches Corner feature, which is something we tried new this year, and I'm happy with how it has gone. A lot of the feedback and insights have been fantastic, and that's one of the reasons why I'd like to today bring on a very special guest, Libby Mascaro, who had been on my podcast, I think a couple of years ago, where she helped, bring to the forefront the conversation about mental health with high school students, with young student athletes, and I think it's a very important conversation that I think it's worth continuing to have. So I'm going to bring Libby on shortly, and we'll discuss that. She's also a proud mother of some young ladies that are doing very well, and we'll talk about that. And yeah, so looking forward to that. And that's the kind of conversations we like to have on this podcast, is to to address these topics that we that go beyond the playing lines, if you will. So that's something important. And also in Coach's Corner, we've addressed some really good questions in terms of the student athlete experience, the coach's experience, all those things. So I think I'd like to touch base with Libby on that, and of course we get to have some good discussion along those lines. So without further ado, let's bring on Libby. She's going to be on very shortly as we continue this conversation, and just hang on here for a second as we do this.
Trying to find something.
All right, we're back. Libby Mascaro is with us. John Krasinski here at Pittsburgh Soccer Now, Kids on the Pitch podcast. Very excited to have you back, Libby, on our podcast for a number of reasons, but one primarily, well, it's great to have you back, and we can tackle some fun and interesting topics.
Absolutely. Well, it's always a pleasure to be here. We appreciate you all you do at PSN. So very happy to be here again. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, first of all, kind of on a personal side, just talk about what it's been like. I think we often have coaches, we talk to players, but just talk about this experience for you recently, because you've been so involved in the game for so long in the capacity of coach in a lot of different areas, but now as a parent, what's that been like? And to talk about your daughters and how they're doing.
Sure. So I try to tell the story about my coaching career as a very interesting and different dynamic. So I have been coaching, well, I resigned last year, but retired, I should say. I coached for a little under 15 years, and I always coached my daughters. So I was a mom coach, but then I got into higher level coaching, coaching Beadling and the Girls Academy. And I just brought kind of a unique perspective of having, 16, 17, 15, 14, 13-year-old girls on the team. So I live with two teenagers. My daughter Mary is 18. My daughter Abby is 16. So I brought this unique perspective of living with two teenagers and living what they go through all day, every day, off the field, on the field, in the classroom, all that stuff. And I brought that to my coaching style and the girls that I coach. So it was kind of a unique dynamic on how I approached leading them, basically. And it was the greatest joy of my life, honestly, to coach my daughters and to certainly coach the girls that I got to coach all those years.
Yeah, and now this year it's your daughters are playing for Upper St. Clair, and you're sitting back from a uh, somewhat subjective viewpoint,
Yeah,
you know, but also
yeah,
from you're pretty good about the looking at it objectively as well.
yeah,
I mean, we always say this that girls quad A soccer has been it's always been a very high level, but it just seems like it gets better and better. And we keep looking around at the landscape in college soccer, for example, and we're
yeah,
seeing so many players from the WPIL and from our area. And then we're also looking now, and even in the NWSL, amazing to see Sarah Shapansky and other players too
yeah.
playing at high level. So just your thoughts on where the game is now.
So the game has certainly changed. I mean, I grew up in the late 90s in Mount Lebanon, and I think there are maybe a handful of girls who came out of Western Pennsylvania that ended up playing in Division One. I mean, I was one of them, but it was a very, very, very small amount.
Right.
Um, the game has changed so much as far as technical skill and just athleticism. Um, and the opportunities for girls in general, just the college landscape is incredible. The amount of girls that are coming out, I think the class of 2027 for NCAA commits or NAIA, JUCO, Division One, Two, and Three. I mean, this is the fastest moving recruiting class ever. We have the most girls committed for the class of 2027 than any other class. So class of 26, 25, 24. And not only are there more of them, they're committing way earlier. So the landscape is definitely on a trajectory that's pretty awesome. It's incredible. So if there's young soccer players who want to play at the higher level, man, that opportunity is there, not only in college, but certainly in the WNSL or
Can
sorry.
Yeah. No.
Um,
Mhm.
it's just it's incredible for these girls. But I do also think that it's changed a little bit as far as the specialization that comes early with any sport, but since we're talking about soccer, we'll talk about soccer.
Right.
Um, and burnout can happen earlier. Injuries, we're seeing an insane amount of injuries overall, but definitely knee injuries. That's a whole other podcast. um,
Yeah.
but then there's that pressure side of, okay, well, I'm playing club soccer at a high level and, my parents are paying all this money. Am I supposed to play clubs or college soccer? Do I have to play college soccer? So I think the pressure has also increased. So then you have the girls, going to school, working hard academically, all these social emotional stuff that happens. And then you have these girls now in this role of being a high level soccer player, competing, comparing. It's definitely it's hard for the girls.
Yeah, I mean, so many things to digest basically from what you're saying there. I was going to ask you maybe a little bit more on the personal side. How is this navigating this world now for your daughters and for yourself as a parent? Because we're all parents. We're all looking at, the enormous challenges of what higher education presents nowadays, right? So there's
Yeah,
all of that going on. Then you have what's the right fit for a child for a
yeah.
young student athlete, and then all those factors you're talking about. Mental health is a topic that you have brought to the forefront. You have been, you have really campaigned and been an advocate for in such a big way. And these things they all add up, don't they?
They do. I think with coming from the parents' perspective and having two girls who are now Division I commits, the recruiting process has also changed.
Right.
So these girls not only are getting, so June 15th after your sophomore year. So let's just get something straight. Most of these girls are 15, 16 years old when June 15th hits after their sophomore year. So NCAA
Right.
rolls June 15th, first day they can call, but the recruiting process starts way before that. So these 15-year-old girls are going to
Hmm.
showcases, playing in front of all these scouts, emailing. It's so much. And then June 15th, your phone rings and there's a possibility of committing, 2 full years before you even commit.
Right. And
Um,
there's a lot of pressure on seems like on the girls' side, especially for some reason.
it's again, the landscape has changed, but
Mhm.
one of the biggest reasons is because, the NCAA came out with a 28 player roster
Right.
cap, and that has
Yeah.
really changed everything. So we had local college teams who had 44 people on their roster. So then you have girls being cut, you have girls going into the portal, you have kids, just quitting in general. Now the roster cap is so small, so now the opportunities to play actually at those levels are now decreasing a little bit. And when coaches took 10 to 14 kids per recruiting class, now they're taking 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Um, so the pressure and the the insanity of the recruiting process is it is it can be fun and challenging and very rewarding, but it's definitely complicated. Both of my girls, Mary, my 18-year-old, she's going to Kent State. Her
Right.
recruiting process was pretty like a book. I mean, it was pretty. She did everything that she was supposed to do, and it kind of all happened in line. And she went on a few visits and committed. My daughter Abby, who just recently committed to Delaware, it was a little bit of a different. It was a little bit different, a different process. In
Yeah.
just 1 year, it's changed a lot. So as a parent, it's like, okay, we went through that process with Mary last year, and then this year, it's like, oh boy, some things have changed. It's a little bit more cutthroat. It's a little bit more, scary. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting process.
If you had one, bit of advice for parents of maybe the 12, 13, 14-year-old young player, do you have any thoughts on that to share?
Um, I think my biggest advice would be every single player journey is completely different. You cannot compare your journey to someone else.
Yeah.
You may think your journey looks like something, but when it comes down to it, every player is different. Every player's needs are different. The best possible other piece of advice is the broken leg test. When your recruiting process starts and say you've narrowed it down to 5 schools and all 5 schools check all the boxes, but do they really check all the boxes? Perfect example, my daughter Abby, she's going to Delaware. She loves everything about it. Coaching staff, resources for the student athletes, facilities. It's somewhat close to home. Um, just everything was great. But also, she wants to be a physical therapist, and they have the top
Hmm.
program in the country. So it checks the
Nice.
box. So if Abby gets injured, something happens to her, she can't play soccer anymore, she still wants to be a Delaware. So the
Right.
broken leg test and don't compare yourself, and everybody's
Hmm.
journey is completely individual is probably my best piece of advice.
Excellent. I think I'm taking notes of those as well, even though I've been through this journey,
Yeah,
before myself, but just
yeah,
a lot of times people do like to ask me questions about this and that. And I've coached
hmm,
at the college level and,
yeah,
I've had kids in college, those type of things. So, but like you said, I think the most important thing that I'm hearing is and I've say this all the time, is that everyone's journey is different. And I think that applies even outside of sports. I think that's something that people should note, like when you're going through the college recruitment process or looking at schools or, just it's what's best for you and and I think and kind of go from there where maybe someone who's selecting a school could find this is where I could blossom, this is where I can be, become a better, grow and develop and learn and be in a good positive environment. So I think that's great advice. So yeah, I mean, just in terms of, I'd like to just switch back into the topic that we brought up the last time. Um, it's been 2 years since you and I spoke, but just your thoughts in terms of the landscape, in terms of the young person navigating through the high school experience, maybe even early college years. Is it more challenging now in terms of working through mental health advocacy, especially those maybe struggling with some different demons and things like that?
So I think the pressure that these kids are under even before they walk out the door. So they're in their homes and they're dealing with the social emotional stuff that happens with, I mean, all children and teenagers, but certainly young girls, you know, even before they walk out the door, they have all this stuff going on. So, whether it's, fighting with their parents, they have a test, they are, you know, fighting with their boyfriend or girlfriend. It's just so much stuff before they even walk out the door. And then they walk out the door to go to soccer practice, whether it's their club team or whether it's their high school team. Um, I think a lot of this, that next step that they take out the door in the car and get to that next place, that the field for their practice, I think what really needs to happen is our coaches, male, female, everybody, needs to be educated on how to lead young athletes, specifically young female athletes, in a way, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, that
Hmm.
is led by love.
Hmm.
And I think if we have these environments where these kids come and they know they're valued, that they're important, that their coaches love them, their coaches see that there's somebody other than a soccer player, that they're, a child, a person first who has all these emotions, all these feelings, outside of kicking a soccer ball or, something like that. That's really where you're going to connect with these players. And if that child is having issues, you're going to be that person to, lessen that pressure, that nervousness, that whatever it is that they're feeling. We have to be better coaches and support staff to be able to really recognize that and make sure these kids are feeling valued as that human first.
Well, I think that's very important, valued as human first. And last time we had you on the podcast too, we shared some resources that you highly recommended, including the National Alliance on Mental Illness and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So when I post this podcast, I will include links to both as well, because as parents, even coaches, there are resources out there. I'll never forget being a coach one time and just doing my thing and talking to the entire team. And I was a young coach at the time, in a high school, uh, at the high school level. And there was one player who I it just wasn't messages weren't getting through. And then I later had found out later that he was unfortunately had a family situation the year before. A family member had passed away, and he still wasn't himself. And I was one of those things as a coach, and I can talk about it now, but it was very hard to to I was hard on myself after that. I was like,
Sure.
I probably, and I always prided myself as a coach to put myself, look at each individual player and their situations, and sometimes something that may work for the whole group, maybe it didn't work, really connect with that one player. So it's just, these are the type of things that I think coaches have to wrestle with all the time.
And I do think that, and educators also, I mean, there's educators and coaches are sometimes, like you said, presented with a situation of a student or a player where it's like, oh gosh, we don't know what to do, or we don't know what to say, or we're not trained
Yeah,
to, professionally help them. But we don't have to be professionally trained. All we have to be is empathetic and
yeah,
really like learn and just acknowledge how important it is to just love them. Every child's gonna be different. So I mean, when I was coaching the Beadling team, there were 17 girls, and every single one of them's different, right? I have two children who were raised in the same home. They're completely different, You have to parent those kids differently. You have to coach individual kids differently. So they would walk into practice, one by one or whatever. And I would make it a point at some point during the 90-minute session. Some would come running over to me and give me a hug because that was their personality. And hey, Coach Libby. And then some wouldn't come up ever. And then towards the end of the practice, because I knew their personality, I would walk up to them and maybe give them a fist bump because they're not a hugger, which is fine. But at least there was that little connection at some point during that 90-minute session. And
Yeah.
then you have no idea what that can do to that kid. And you will have kids, like you said, who you just don't know what they're going through. That's another thing, which is human-like anyway, that we all should adopt, is you have no idea what somebody's going through, ever.
Mhm.
You cannot
Yeah.
assume that somebody is a certain way. There's usually a reason why someone is not, themselves. So we just, we don't know what they're going through. But if we love them all the time and are empathetic towards them and give them a hug or some sort of whatever connection, it's we're winning there. I mean, and I'll say it again till I'm blue in the face. The magic equation is yes, X's and O's. You have to know the sport you're coaching. You have to know the technical and the tactical stuff of soccer, but I will say that it's 80-20. X's and O's, 80% love, empathy, leading with, this like overwhelming love for your players. And I swear they will do anything for you. They will do anything for each other. That's the key, in my opinion.
Right. And it's hard to top that. That's the, that's I think where the focus is. And if when you walk away and you look back at the years that, maybe when we played or when we coached, we think about all those moments. It's the people, it's those connections, those human connections that we've had that are the most lasting, I think, in terms of all those experiences.
And those kids, I mean, I'd say most of them are not going to go on to play professionally. Yes, they may play, after college or after high school, but very small percentage are going to go on past those 4 years. So these relationships that you're building, not only teammate to teammate, but coach to player, is that's going to end in the coach teammate or coach player time. That's going to end at some point, whether it's the last day you coach them or the last day they actually play, soccer. After that, they're going to remember you one way or another. Are they going to remember you as being the coach that was like, oh my gosh, he or she was so supportive. I just loved playing for her or him. And I just, I wanted to do everything I could for her. Or is it going to be the opposite? So when you go out there to start coaching and planning your session for these kids, like, what do you want them to say about you 20 years from now? Are they going to be like, oh my gosh, there's Coach Libby, and run up to you when they're married and have kids and be like, oh, she coached me when I was in 8th grade? Like, isn't that the ultimate goal? It's really, yes, soccer is important and we love playing the game, but goodness, relationships and these connections and the humanness of it all is way more important than anything else.
I agree. Yes, absolutely. So, one of the questions I posed in the Coach's Corner feature that we've been running on PSN has been about the rewards and challenges. And I've gotten so much wonderful feedback from the coaches. And these are the type of things that hopefully we will continue to do in the coming year, even when high school season's over. I think there's opportunities on our site to explore a lot of these topics and to get more feedback. And I think people are interested and appreciate that. But I just wanted to share that, one of the questions was, what are the greatest rewards? What are the greatest challenges of working with young people today? You sort of answered, I think, especially the challenges piece. I think a lot of the coaches shared similar feedback, which I really liked to hear, to see that it wasn't just about what was going on the field. And I thought that was really great. But just any other thoughts on those two specific areas, especially the rewards? I think that there's a lot in terms of the rewards, isn't there?
I mean, I will, the greatest, some of the best days that I've ever had were coaching. Certainly my daughters, but the teams that I coach, the girls that I've coached, and to see where they are now. I mean, so many of them are graduating this year, are seniors, and my kids make fun of me because I'm seriously, I'm crying like every 15 minutes thinking about, these amazing
Yeah.
kids that I had
Hmm.
the absolute privilege of
Hmm.
being with when they were 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. I mean, I can't imagine not doing that. It is such
Hmm.
an important part of my life, and the time that I spent with them and how incredible each and every single one of them are. I mean, I hosted the Upper St. Clair girls pasta dinner. We know it's a tradition here every week. And, there's 9 seniors on the team, and I coached every single one of them at one point. And
Wow.
to
Hmm.
see them coming through my kitchen and be these incredible women, smart, great soccer players, great kids, and to give them a hug and just, I don't know, there's just that that is the most rewarding. I mean, being my daughter's coaches clearly was the best days of my life, but being with those other players and their families, I don't think anything could ever replicate that. It was a very special time.
Well, I think we all have to cherish those moments and make them count. And I think hopefully a lot of the coaches are. It seems like again from the feedback from all the coaches, they're certainly sharing that as well.
That's
Libby,
awesome.
I would love to talk longer, and we could go on and on about this, but I think we really you really hit some really key points here, and I appreciate having you on, and this has been really great. Now that the postseason is about ready to get started, I think we're also there's a lot of people anxiety seems to go higher. The balancing act of being able to manage, I would say postseason, but also for some young student athletes, the season's coming to an end or their careers are
Hmm.
coming to an end. So there's
Yeah.
there's all of that as well that to manage. So just any bits of advice along those lines.
So a bunch of moms were talking about this probably like 3 weeks ago was the time of the season where the kids are starting to get really tired. They're physically exhausted because they're on this grind since, early August. Their academics are starting to amp up. Their sleep deprivation is increasing. The time of recovery for them is lower. So all these things are against them right now. Like these girls, think about it. They're these 16, 17, 18 beautiful human beings who are just so young and have so much going at them at the same time. It's like one arrow after another, just over and over again. And they don't have a whole lot of resources. We expect these girls to be like college athletes, but yet college athletes have all these resources and support, right? So then we have these young girls who are exhausted, tired, academically, physically, socially, emotionally. Like you said, a lot of them are playing their last game ever. Some of them are going into the playoffs with a lot of adversity, injuries, and everything else. So it's peak anxiety, peak emotion, and I hope parents are loving on their kids more than usual. And I
Mhm.
hope coaches are really loving on these girls more than usual because they need it. We need to support them.
Yeah, and you sometimes it brings out the best in everyone. Sometimes it brings out the worst in everyone when the stakes everyone feels are higher and greater. So I think that's a challenge. That's definitely one of those challenges.
And I feel for them. I feel for the coaches. It's a lot for them too, and they are trying their best with the resources that they have also. So I think the girls are privileged and lucky to be in these environments and have these opportunities and be coached by, the coaches that are out there. I think if everybody just kind of supports the girls, the parents, the coaches, each other, teammates. It's the best way to be able to be successful. And I think just really understanding that these girls are going through a lot.
Definitely. We are definitely going to be looking forward to the postseason. No, that's always an exciting time. Upper St. Clair, you just every year they've got to deal with, you know, you've got Peters Township, Mount Lebanon, just in their own section, but then going outside. My hat's off to the coaches. They have to balance that to be able to play all those tough teams, and maintain a really intense schedule, but also also try to figure out how to do sometimes 3 games a week and keep everybody fresh and healthy. There's been a lot of feedback that have come back to the coach's corner and even just to me in general about, like, one of the questions I posed was about the starting times being so late or getting back. When do you get back from an average night game, road games? And a lot of people, there was different answers all around, but it was a lot of 10:30, 11 o'clock. And I mean, it's almost like, well, that's the way it's always been, but I think there are ways that they can improve on
I think so too. And this again, a separate
that.
podcast as far as injury rates,
Yeah,
among young female athletes is it's really, really bad. And some
yeah,
people are talking about it, but not enough.
yeah.
It's very serious. But um, I'm glad you're asking those questions of the coaches, and I'm hoping that maybe something will go back to the WIPIAL or the PIAA to kind of start a conversation about, the load versus the recovery that's happening with these very, very young female athletes. Again, with not the amount of support or resources that a college athlete would get. And if you look at college athletes, they've now or college
Hmm.
soccer, they're now backing down on the schedule a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, now
Hmm.
they're playing maybe 1 to 2 games a week, maybe, and then they have all these other resources. So then you have
I
high
think they
school.
expanded the week. I think they expanded the season by a regular season by a week, which
They
helped.
did, which is
Uh,
huge.
yeah.
So you think about high school soccer, let's say it starts the first week of August and it could end the end of November or mid-November. That's 5 to 6 practices a week, sometimes at least 2 games, sometimes three. So you're seeing this load recovery ratio being very, very, very small. And then you add on academics, social, emotional. It's like, what are we doing? Um, so I'm hoping that maybe the feedback can get back to the WIPIAL. I think it would be something great for them to look at and kind of revamp a little bit as far as what we're expecting out of the kids. I think we would see less injuries, um, and I think we would just see happier, happier players, happier kids. But I will tell you, our section, actually, just in general, the
Yeah.
amount of talent
Yeah.
that is at Peters Township, the amount of talent in Mount Lebanon, Upper St.
Hmm.
Clair is on paper is insane. Just
Hmm.
incredibly talented, gifted athletes. It's so much fun to watch.
Hmm.
NA, Seneca Valley, all of our games against those teams have been, I mean, if anybody wants to see really good women's soccer, girls soccer, they got to catch a game because
Hmm.
it's so much fun to watch these athletes. They're incredible kids, they're great athletes, really fun to watch them competing.
Yeah, we'll have plenty of opportunities in the coming next 2, 3 weeks on the bigger stages in terms of the high school playoffs and state, the district and the state. So yeah, the opportunities will be there. Hopefully everybody gets enough rest and recovery and if it gets right, jump back up and can play. I think my only concern about the postseason typically is that week of the championships. There could be a Tuesday, Friday turnaround, which isn't too bad. But then when we get into the PIAA playoffs, I think that sometimes it gets real tight, like Tuesday night, and then all of a sudden Friday, Thursday, or the Friday, they might be playing a state final. I mean, I know these teams have come so far, and adrenaline gets them through, but you just want it to be played at the highest level possible with everybody being on equal terms, you know?
Yeah, that's tough when it gets to that PIA final week. I mean, it's a lot. These girls are on a grind, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I give them credit though. I mean,
Mhm.
they can handle it. They can. I
Yeah.
mean, they're incredible, but we do need to maybe tweak a couple of things.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Obviously, it's been taking a while. There's been potential proposed changes with officiating and one whistle and all that, and then it kind of got scrapped. So we'll see. I think all you can do is continue to advocate and hope that do what's best for the student athletes, and maybe not this current group or couple years, but the future generations of all these high school players will have even better opportunities. And there's this whole thing, movement going on in terms of the high school game and where where it stands in US in the hierarchy of soccer in the United States. And you've coached on the academy level. but you see the value and the importance of the high school side. I guess it's a good question to ask in terms of it
I mean,
belongs.
I
Yeah.
I went to Mount Lebanon, played in the late 90s, and we were a Whippeal dynasty, I'll say it. We won the first ever PI state championship. We won two Whippeal championships. We were runner up in the Whippeals 2 years. Um, we there is not a chance that my kids were not going to play high school soccer.
Mhm.
There is nothing like high school soccer. I don't care what anybody says. There's nothing like playing in front of your peers, your best friends, all of your family, your friends, your teachers, your administrators. Um, my high school experience, talk about being the best of days. Those were the best of days. And even though my daughters, have not won a Whippeal championship, they have not won a state championship, these 4 years of playing soccer together with their friends, I would guarantee you are the best memories from high school. And it's a shame because you have, one league in particular on the boys' side, MLS Next, who does not allow their players to play high school. And
Right.
actually, before the girls' academy was starting, the DA did not allow their girls to play high school soccer. I just would never, I can't imagine choosing to play club and not being allowed to play a high school sport. There's nothing like it. I hope that everybody gets a chance to play it, whether it's soccer or some other sport. It's just there's something way more valuable and way more exciting and just rewarding than anything else. So.
Well, you just made your case. I
What's
mean,
that?
it's a great case. I said you just made a great case, for sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot of movement there, and even some people in the very higher end of the game. I've heard people like I can't remember exact names, but it was former U.S. men's national team players. I think like Clint Dempsey or players
Yeah,
like that have spoken out along those lines as well. So yeah, hopefully, I think there's a place for it on the. I really do, and if there's a Tanner Rossborough or someone like that every now and then that has this
get
incredible
it.
opportunity, that's fine. But
Yes,
we're talking about the majority, the overwhelming majority of young people who to have that to have that experience, I think would be really beneficial. So, all right,
agree.
Libby.
It's a
Well,
small percentage.
yeah, exactly. It's always great to have you on and to talk to you. I appreciate you know, your feedback and sentiment and just I thought after asking all those coaches questions, I thought it would be great to get your take on things.
Well, I appreciate you so much again for everything you do at PSN, highlighting our high school athletes and everything that you do. It's really a pleasure to be here. So thank you.
You're welcome, and we'll be talking soon. See you soon.
Thank you.
All right.